friends, this is Tony and I'd like to welcome you to my shop. Today I'm going to be making a wedgie sled. This is so I can start making some segmented rings with a little more precision. I've done okay, so I'll bring one over there and show you. I'm just trying to get some stuff out of the way for when we cut this our base here. But I've been making some little segmented parts here. And so far, it's turned out pretty good. I mean, we've got nice tight joints, but I've been doing them on the miter, and I'm having to spend a lot of time getting some sanding and stuff in there. And I've watched enough videos now to know, hey, you know what? Let's do this the right way. I think I'm gonna be doing a lot more segmented turning in the future. So I'm gonna go ahead and build a wedgie sled. The first thing that I'm gonna do is cut myself a square. I've got this melamine with a nice gray vinyl on top that should keep glue from getting on it, keep it nice and smooth. So I'm just going to cut it into a 16-inch square, and then we'll take it over to the other bench and lay it out for how we're going to set up the sled. Hopefully you'll enjoy this. It's a new adventure for me, and I like sharing this kind of stuff. So let me know what you think in the comments below. But in the meantime, let's get to cutting. That should be the last time we need the table saw until we're ready to start setting up this jig. The rest of it's going to be some drilling, some marking, a little bit of routing, and there's a couple of cool tips I've picked up that hopefully make it worth your time. Let's go for the layout. All you need is a carpenter square tape measure. Right now we know our piece is 16 inches. We've got a pretty good cut there. We're actually at 15 and just about an eighth shy, so I must have set the fence right to that, but that's not going to make any difference this direction. And this is the direction we didn't cut. Actually, the direction we did cut, we're right at 16. So the piece of melamine that I had here was 15 and 7/8. So I'm going to rotate so we have an even number here. We're going to use the 16-inch dimension here. So all we have to do is find 8 inches here in the middle. This is going to be our center line for the entire jig. So we'll go ahead and mark a line for that. And that should be dead center. And then we're going to go 2 inches to each side. And since we're right at 8, all we have to do on this one, we'll just lock it up here, go over to 6 this way. Flip it this way, we should be right on the 8 again. Are just about right on the 8. Go over to the 6 here. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and scribe those lines in. This is going to be kind of the basis for where we're going to put our pivot points for this fixture. Now we're going to measure over and up 1 inch. This is where we're going to put our pivot bolt. Come over to this side, measure up 1 inch. Put that down there. And then we can go up to the top up here and we'll go a full 8 inches, which puts us at 9. Make a mark here for 9. Put them over here. This will be our lockdown spot. We could go a little further than 9 inches, to be honest, because of how far we are. It'll give us more play with our fence. So I think I'm actually going to go all the way to 11. This is an on-the-fly change, and it shouldn't impact how the fixture works at all. Okay, so we've got that there. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and get out my punch. I'm going to punch these 4 holes so we get a nice tight spot to center, and then we'll head over to the drill press and we're going to drill 4 1/4-inch holes for this, for our pivot points and for our starting and how we're going to put this together. So let's go get that punch and I'll meet you over at the drill press. So with those holes, using a brad point drill bit, we should have no problem getting pretty precise. Oops. My spring just stopped spinning. There we go. And probably have my head in the camera. Sorry about that. And so those will be our 4 1/4-inch holes. Okay, so these holes in the front part of our layout here are going to end up being our permanent pivot points, and back here is going to be the start of the arcs we have for adjusting our fence angles. So I'm just going to get this. I got a little force through bit here that I thought would drill a better hole. Just 4 more holes like that. Of course, we'll countersink this backside where that tear out is with a larger drill bit for to put our carriage bolts in so that they fall all the way into the holes. And with that little brad point goes right into the hole of our from our power. There's 2. Right in the hole there. Tear out on that one. We'll come over to our last hole. We're still going to be drilling those out to countersink our carriage bolts that'll act as the runners up here and lockdown guides for our fences. There we go. Go a little smoother. Still some chip out there on the back. This is our down surface on the jig anyway, but we're going to go ahead and drill some countersink holes there that'll take our carriage bolts. So let's change out bits and we'll do that next. As you can see, we did get some tear out here, which won't affect the function, but it does affect the aesthetics. So it makes me sad. I'd probably want to recut this if I had more material right now. But our carriage bolts will now go right through those holes, sit flush below the surface. And the first 2 that we're going to use are our pivots there. So that will be what we'll use now to cut our arcs up here for our full play. But before we do that, we have to cut some fences. So let's go back over to the table saw. We've got our table saw set up for a 2-inch rip, approximately. That dimension's not critical, so I'm not fussing with it much, but what we do need are perfectly parallel fences for this. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna cut this off, and then we'll cut our fences to length. We're gonna start with 16 inches, and then we'll measure both ends to see how parallel they are. And if we need to take them down, tape them together, and run them through the drum sander to get them exactly parallel, then that's the next step. First, let's go ahead and get our 2-inch stripper off this 1/4 sheet of MDF. There's one other piece we're going to need, and I'm going to go ahead and cut it now. We're going to cut it the same width as our fence, and this is going to be our router template for us to cut those grooves. Super simple. You think cutting that groove with a router is going to be a huge thing. Everything that I've seen, it's a pretty easy cut and dry process. So let's go ahead and get ourselves a 2-inch wide strip of this. About time for me to replace my zero clearance fence tape there. So now we've got a 2-inch piece here. Let's make sure that we're on the money. 13 thousandths over. And on the other end, I'm 7 thousandths over. So we're gonna tape these all together and run them through the drum sander so we get them perfectly parallel. And that'll be our next step. So having just realized I am out of the double-sided tape, I looked at my drum sander and I think I can pass these straight through. Just a couple little clamps on the side to hold them together. We've got a nice flat surface here to work from. So all we need to do is kind of line up the end here, make sure that we get a nice tight grip there. We'll put these right in the middle. I guess I should set one first and then we'll get to the other one. Just as long as we're keeping it low and level, it'll pass right through the drum sander without any issues at all. And now we can get all of these perfectly parallel. I am only going to take off about 7 thousandths, and I'm going to need to set up dust collection for this because this MDF, even sawing it a few times, it just doesn't feel healthy. But You can see it's nice. I mean, in most cases you'd be, wow, that's a good fit, but we are off by about 7 thousandths, so we want perfectly parallel. So I'm gonna run it through one side this way, taking a few thousandths off. We'll flip it over and run it through this way a couple times until we know we're perfectly centered. And then we're gonna mark out and drill all of our holes at one time. But I wanna get this sanded up first for that. So I'll be right back when that's done. I don't think it's worth video time. I mean, if you don't have a sander like that, you can run this through a jointer. You can use a belt sander. You can also set up your table saw to take just little haircuts off and get a nice tight fit on your fence. But about 6 thousandths is pretty much the precision of the way my fence setup is with this stock fence. So that's about all I usually could expect. And that's over, that was a 3-foot section, and we lost 7 thousandths of an inch over 3 feet. So that's, or 4 feet. So that's not too bad. If you figure that out, that's, you know, less than 2 thousandths of an inch per foot of tolerance, which, you know, in precision cabinet making, high-end clock making, things like that, that would be a deal killer. But for putting together jigs and fixtures, for the most part, that's going to be adequate. Okay, let's see if we got any better here. We'll zero our micrometer. Come in there. We're at 2 inches in this spot. Let's move over here. Exactly 2 inches. And 1996. So about 4 thousandths total variance. And I think that's going to be where we're at right now for the MDF. So that's going to work out pretty good for us. So now let's go ahead and mark out our holes and get ready to drill our template. So for our first hole, we want to be 1 inch up from the edge, just like we were on our first template. So right here is 1 inch. I'm going to go ahead and mark that off as close as you can with the carpenter's square. And then our centering, we know we're at 2 inches, so we want to come to that middle of that for 1 inch. And that is going to be our very first hole there. I'll get the punch back out. And we want to drill all 3 of these at the same time. You'll see why in a minute. But if we don't drill all 3 at the same time, and use a drill press, you can't freehand this one, we'll end up with an uneven system. So we're going to drill that first hole, and then from there up to 9 inches, or we can put this over our existing carriage bolts, poke a brad bit through there, and we'll know exactly where our holes needs to be. So that's going to be how we do it, to make sure that we get it exactly lined up. Because when you're doing a 1/4 inch drill bit, those usually plus or minus 3 thousandths just out of the box. Those errors start to stack up. So if we end up with 10 thousandths, 15 thousandths, we'll end up with a rough fit. And we really want to try it as close as we can so we maintain the precision we're looking for. So I'm going to go drill some holes. Be right back. I put 2 blocks on here so I can keep my spring clamps on and keep everything lined up pretty good. I just want to, we had that hole we punched earlier. I'm going to be a little low. So I'm going to loosen up here. Crank this up. Because this is a pretty short drill bit. I have a 4-inch travel. I think it's 4-inch travel. 3 1/8 inch. So we'll still make it through this without any problem if we get lined up there tight. Okay, let me lock this down. It's an awkward angle, trying to stay out of the camera and lock down the drill press. So what I want to do is get that brad point on my little Forstner right into the hole we just did. Get that all the way through. And switch now. I'm through the top, so I have a centering hole. I'm going to switch this to a standard 1/4 inch wood drill bit. Get rid of the Forstner. The Forstner, these teeny ones, don't clean out fast enough, even when you're pulling them up and down. As you can see, it just fills up too quick. So we'll just switch to a regular brad point drill bit or a standard wood bit. Let's see what I have available over here in the drawer. Okay, let's get that line back up. This drill bit should fit right in that hole. Help us center it out. Right in there. Nice centered hole all the way through. So let's pop on over now and see how these are going to line up and how we're going to use them later. Okay, since we have one reference hole already that'll index all of our pieces together, we can get rid of our clamps now for this portion. We slide those on our carriage bolt. And we'll see how that, our two fences. Since we have a little angle up there, these are going to be held down on the other side. And that's how we're going to make these work. So, there's our two fences for the wedgie. We're going to now carve our arc in here that will be for our lockdown pin. Now, the reason that we cut that other piece and why it's so important is because this is going to be our router guide to cut that part. We'll drill our hole in exactly the right spot. We'll stick our router bit through that and our little plunge router with some double stick tape on there, get it perfectly centered, and then we can just make our router cuts just like that. And we can do the same thing for the carriage bolt on the back side. After we have our groove, we'll line it over, flip this around, put the carriage, put a larger 5/8 drill bit up, or a router bit, and then we'll route the relief groove for the head of our carriage bolt. So I have the black ones up front. Got another couple of them here. I might use the silver, don't know. But we'll be able to have that relief cut in there. It'll travel underneath that with this square part in our 1/4 inch groove. All the way back. Always be able to lock it in place. So that's where we're heading. Let's get a test fit in here now. So we know we have our other carriage bolts. So I don't have to pop these in too hard. So it's flush, no problem. I think a better YouTuber would already have his bolts out of the bag before he starts recording. I am learning, people, bear with me. There we go. So those are all in. We have these together. We have our reference unit here, which we need to pull it just a little bit that direction. There we go. So I'm not going to force the other ones on until we do the rest of our drilling, but there we are. And that should be pretty parallel, even though that's not a critical component. This is an adjustable fence. But I'll go ahead and pop this apart and we'll get ready to do the routing portion. Mark out the travel we're looking for here. Hopefully, we can get in there. We don't need to go inside of 90, so we'll probably stop right on that end and run our travel out to there. And we'll move this over to the other side. And this is our template here. Start a little inside here because we have that tear out. So from there, I will set out some stop marks for myself. And I'm going to just use the width of this, which is 1 inch. Bring it right up to the edge. Kind of just mark a line, and this is where I want to stop on that side. Do the same thing over here. So those are my stop lines. I'll stop here. And I'll stop here with my router bit routing that groove, and that should be pretty good. These two arcs should give us what we need to make that work. They should be moderately identical. So let's set up for routing, and I'll bring you back when I'm ready to try that out. Okay, so I've got my tape here. This is the Xterra tape. I'll put a link in the description. This is literally tape specifically designed for woodworkers, so I have found it to be quite good. I don't know if there's other brands out there. To be honest, I haven't even looked, but I've been very happy with this tape. So we're going to put a couple pieces on here, and then we're going to use that to connect to our router, our little plunge router. Readdress that we're going to do the first groove from the front. So we cut through it. If there's any tear out, it'll be on the bottom of our jig. And then we will do the relief cut for the carriage bolt on the back side. So there we go. So I've got that. Now all we need to do is push down our plunge so we get a good grab there. And I'm just going to hold that down. See, we just drilled that same 1/4 inch hole. It takes the 1/4 inch up spiral bit. We're right in the middle there. Should be fine just like that. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this around, set up and clamp this board down. I do need to lift it up off the off so we don't have any tear out. I don't have a big piece of foam right now. I'm kind of all out of that stuff. But you can see how this little template will work now. It'll put us right in the center hole there. We drop one of our carriage bolts that we use for our rotating pivot point over here. And this is going to slide in that perfect arc. And we can even watch underneath there, seeing where our arc is for our stop points. Back around this other side. So that's the current game plan. So what I've done, I'm on the top side now. I put a mark where roughly parallel is. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect, but this is where we're going to stop. And then I put a mark over here for where I want to stop the groove on the top side. So I know that as I'm routing through, we'll take this in small steps. Obviously, we're going to go, you know, quarter inch at a time until we get there. That's our current goal. But we'll take like 3 passes. I'm going to take the first pass with it just clamped to the table, and then I can actually probably clamp it to our table off the edge. This is what I'll actually do. So we'll clamp it off the edge of the table, and I'll clamp it to the side with a couple of clamps to make it nice and safe. I don't have to worry about ripping up my just to be super clear, I have never done this before. So this is a brand new thing for me. And I'm going to see, I think when we plunge down right now, it should go right into the hole there. Let's see if we're lined up right. Yep, we're in the hole. So I can do that. We know we're in a good spot. Let's see what happens. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? Next, I'm going to plug in the router. That works sometimes too. Cross your fingers for me, guys. So that was our first one. I'll move down another 1/4 of an inch or so. I think I'm doing a couple yeah, about 1/4 inch at a time. Turn her on. Plunge, lock, slide. Go down a little more. And once we're at that 3/4 inch gap, usually do it, I guess they recommend you do about 3 passes. I should grab a little dust collector here. And let's grab a brush up here. Let's see how we've done so far. Yeah, it's taking a really nice little cut. We're almost all the way through. So we'll come back over to our line here. Crank it up about 3 more. Doesn't matter if we pass all the way through. Make sure we're not going to hit the wall over here. We're not. Still nice and tight. Okay. That should give us a perfect groove. Oh, looks like we're still a little bit of ways to go. Just a bit. So easy enough, right? Just park it back on. Line up our hole on this end. Our line over here. We know we're at the start of our cut. Crank it up a bit more. I thought I had it at 3/4 of an inch yet, but again, first time I've done this, so do one more shot. Now, look at that. We have our slide here. So this is where our carriage bolt will travel, and this is we adjust our fence angles. And we're for underneath, we're gonna have to flip it over after we do this one on this side. We'll flip it over so that we can add a relief for this on the bottom side to travel in. So far, let's just see for grins here. when we take our, take our first one there, and our second carriage bolt will be up in here. You should see it slide nice and safe without any back and forth play. So that's how we're going to make our wedgies. So I'll go ahead and cut this other side, and I'll go ahead and record it, but I might just speed it up. I don't think it adds any value on what you guys are up to, but I do have to set up our marks again. So to do that again, what I did is I dropped the drill bit, or excuse me, the router bit, yep, upcut bit in there. Drop my pivot bolt down in this end. Get it just right, everything else right. There we go. And when I'm nice and tight in there, I put a line. This is where we started. It's going to be on the inside. And then let's pull this all the way up. Swing it over to where we want to stop. Got clamp in the way now. Let's move the clamp out of our way. It's tight right there though. Move this over to about where we want to stop. That looks about right to me. Again, it doesn't have to be identical or perfect. So I know that that black line is where I'm going to bring the inside of it to. Now we need to reset our depth stops, but I have the turret down here. I think you just rotate it, yep. So it has my 3 stops to get us all the way to the bottom now. So there's our first one, and we'll do the same thing again. The next height, just a turn of the turret here. Make sure we're seated in our hole. I've seen a lot of guys with way more router comfort who will just whip through all these right away. I'm not one of those guys, so I'm going to stop each time. I also have the Makita set at about half speed. I also have a link for this Makita plunge router. They had a sale on Amazon, and it's a really good deal. And we have both of our grooves. So like we did last time, I'm going to go ahead and unplug the router now, or just get it way far away so we don't have to worry about it playing games with us. Because I am afraid of routers, as you should be. They are, I know they can be a very safe tool, but they're also a very scary tool. So let's go ahead and start this one on top so we know where we're in. Make sure our other carriage bolt travels freely. Nice positive stops in the middle. So we're ready to flip it over now and drill out the relief groove for this. Be right back where we're set up for that. Okay, now we are set up to cut the first arc relief for the dado for our carriage bolts. So let's see if our carriage bolts are gonna that went far enough to the edge. Yep, it's there, but we're still, I don't know if we're, oops. Yep, and we're completely under them. Let's see that that's gonna bump anything. I might go down just a quarter turn more because I wanna make sure that they're all the way in there and hold it nice and tight. I also went over a little bit further so that we can make sure that on this end, our carriage bolt sets all the way up against the edge as well. And it's gonna ride right up to the end, so we should be safe there. So I'm gonna go ahead and take our next pass, and we'll see how we do. Really good though if we make sure that we don't have a carriage bolt sitting in there before the router bit gets there, huh? I think that should allow. I countersunk a little deep when we did our original countersink, but that is going to slide fine under there. Put a nice tight board on top, and it still slides back and forth. Doesn't touch anything. That's all we need. So we have our depth set, so the other one's going to go even faster. Let's pull our pin out here. Walk it over to this one. I'm going to show you a cool trick that I think it's a cool trick. We'll find out if it's a cool trick or not. On how we can get those countersinks down there perfect too. I think if we'd actually started our countersinks on the other side first, this trick would probably be much more efficient. But we're going to turn this around this way, and we're going to put our stop pin in that first hole with the I'll get it all the way over to the edge here. We should have something to set on there, but it looks like we're just gonna have a little bit more play than I want because I did set the first hole first. But we're gonna go ahead and plunge down here real quick. That should give us a nice countersink hole over that one. Do the same thing here. Just trying to eyeball a little bit so see if we can clean up that hole a little. And that, my friends, should be basically it, aside from us setting the fences up now and getting everything tightened up. So this is our bottom surface here. So we'll probably still put some Johnson's paste wax on it when we get ready to start getting the runner together. And the runner on this one's nowhere near as critical as doing like a miter fence because all of our angles are set by our two swinging fences. So we have a lot of things that are just better for us the way we set this one up. So let's put these in, and I know you guys are thinking, he's a turner, and I know this is got to be a turning video at some point, and it is. We are going to head over in a few minutes here, and we're going to make the knobs to lock down on top of our 1/4-20s here. I just need to find my other black screw. Has anyone seen it? There it is. Okay, so let's put these through. So we flip these over without losing our screws yet. I guess I'll just hold them out this way. Go quickly. There we go. All right, so we're in here. So does this slide the way? Or am I on something? This one. They're the same settings, so they should both slide the same. Okay. Put the leverage on, it might make a difference. We should check the camera angle, make sure you guys can see this okay. Okay, so there we go. Once you get a little leverage on it, it slides just fine. So in there. One side seems to slide a little bit nicer than the other, but get all the way out like that, put our wedgie in there, lock it down, and we'll be good to go. We'll probably end up rounding off the edges of these. This is the fences we're going to use are the outside and insides, but if we're using a longer piece of stock, right now we're kind of limited to, depending on how big a segment we're making, I can cut a segment that is 1 3/4 inches, but we'll be on the outside and the outside there. So we should be able to cut whatever stock we want, to be honest. All right, so we're at this spot now. I'm going to probably get a little mineral spirits, clean the, all the markings we had up on the top off. I'm going to wax these, the little Johnson's paste wax, but I think it's time for us to make some knobs. So let's head over to the lathe and make the knob. What we're going to do is we're going to cut a little round piece, and we're going to just use some T-nuts. These are 1/4-20 by 5/16 T-nuts. So if we do a little better than 1/2 inch thick knob, and I think I have some pre-rounded stock over that I've done for like Christmas trees and Santas. We'll stick these into our knob and make a nice little knob on top of here. It'll make it easy for us to tighten and loosen our fences. We'll permanently attach the ones down in that end, but we still need to be able to loosen them and tighten them to really lock something in. But these 4 will turn 4 semi-identical knobs. I'm not a super stickler for them having to be identical, but we will go ahead and set that up as well. So I'll go set up over there, and this will also be a separate video making knobs for your jigs in the shop. But there we go. I'm really happy with where we're going so far. All right, see you in a couple of minutes. Okay, starting out with 9/64 drill bit. That's what's going to accept this little cutoff here. Before I drill that first hole though, I'm going to flatten that spot off and use a test. Since we have a little leftover piece here from some Christmas ornaments I was doing, I'm just going to flatten this little piece off, not all the way to the end, so we can drill our hole and test fit to make sure that that drill bit was a good call. Sometimes my millimeters to inches doesn't quite do the trick. Sometimes we end up with a tweener. Pull this out of the way. I'm going to drill out that first bit of it right there. It looks to me that's a lot bigger than it needs to be. A lot bigger. So I'm going to go down a couple drill bit sizes until we get one that I think is going to be just right. Be right back. Yeah, I was way off. I was not paying attention to my chart. It's really a 15/16. I just also looked at the packaging that the thing came in, and that's the size hole we need to drill. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten that end off. We'll do one more test cut here. Test drill. Make sure that we're going the right route here. Still have a bit of a hole in it. We'll be able to see if it fits better. The depth. Quickly, 3 inches. So we're into the end part there. So that should be all we need with our drill bit. We'll take our little insert here, and it fits right into that hole. We'll press fit that in. We'll actually should press fit the first one in right away, so we get a good tight fit on that. Let me get this out here first. We can actually use our tailstock as a press. This is something that just works good, goes quickly. We just have to be able to line that first one up in there perfectly, and it looks like we can darn close. But it's, I'm going to go ahead and peel off that anyway, so we're flat and flush. I don't want to risk any. I don't want to risk messing this up. I only have this much walnut. That's closer. We will clean these up and make them pretty. Just make sure our first one looks the way I want it to look. Yep. That won't fit. So basically, you can treat this like an arbor press as long as it's big enough. Might have to get a little block of wood too, because the hole in mine, my MT2 taper, is just a little bit bigger. We have just a nice little piece of ply here to do the trick. So a lot of times guys will just bang these in with a hammer, but I'm always reluctant to just bang anything in with a hammer. So we'll use this as an arbor press. Press it right into the wood, gives a nice flat, flush feeling here. And we'll back that off. And that's set in there pretty nicely. I'm still gonna put a washer on the bottom. And now I'm gonna go ahead and sand the end of this thing real quick. And we'll draw a line over here 1/2 inch deep. And then we'll do the next one and the next one and the next one. We'll just cut these right off and those will be our knobs. Remember, the bolt has to go all the way through to make this work. We could also measure this diameter and countersink that a bit, but having that little bit of play under there with a washer is gonna make it easier to grab the knob, in my opinion. But let me do a quick sand on this. Again, it's shop furniture. And I'm gonna go ahead and turn my dust collector on because one that does get me. And I'm gonna grab a smaller footrest because I don't want to keep moving my tailstock back. There's good. Get out the ruler. Scribe on this one. And go 1/2 inch in from the end. Should be all we need. Little scribe. Tells me where I want to use my parting tool. I will go to the outside edge of the parting of that. I'm going to grab a spindle gouge just around over the top. It's just a matter of personal preference, really. Feels like it's going to be a little easier to grab like that. Again, just my opinion. Ding. Okay, before we go any further, I'll go pick up the little guy who just found his home in the shavings, and we'll run over and test it out before we make the rest of our knobs. We already have our holes, so it should be a pretty quick slam dunk to do that. That was a perfect fit, so I'm going to go ahead and crank out the other 4 knobs, and then we'll get back to testing the sled. I've got the traditional Johnson's paste wax here. And before we do a final assembly and fit, I'm going to go ahead and wax the bottom here of our runners and the top. We'll just knock out our bolts. We've test fit everything. It all fits fine. But I think getting these things waxed up a little bit is going to help them over the long run just run smoother, not absorb glue if we have anything on there, and keep our fences looking pretty good. It's just MDF, so a nice rubbing in with some steel wool with some paste wax on the bottom should help it slide nicer. I might put a little paste wax also in the runners underneath. The other thing I didn't point out yet on the runners is you got to line that square head of the carriage bolt into the runner properly, or you'll pull it out. You'll ruin your stuff. I'll go ahead and wax the top too, because this is where the chances of me getting glue or something on it when I'm not paying attention. I might chamfer these the bottom edge as well, just a little chamfer plane, just so that sawdust doesn't become a factor. And we're still gonna have to make this whole entire process work. I'm gonna have to get out the, make a brand new insert. I can make something and double stick tape it to my existing insert, but I think making a zero clearance insert with a ramp is gonna be the way to go. That pushes each of the little wedges that you cut, it'll push it off the edge. Let's get the ends here. And keep it away from the blade. You have to worry about it flying back at you. This other end's probably gonna end up getting trimmed a little bit, but we'll go ahead and wax it now. See how it fits. So you can see there's not a whole lot to the process here. Lifts off just fine. So I don't know if you guys are paste wax users anymore. This was kind of like the go-to back in the day. I still see, I use it on my table saw, my lathe bed. Whenever I'm doing my maintenance, you've seen there's a video up about lathe maintenance and bandsaw and stuff like that, how I use a scouring pad, get everything nice and clean, bright and shiny, and then I'll put a fresh coat of Johnson's paste wax on it. And just protects it, makes it look nice, keeps it from rusting if you're doing a lot of green wood, keeps the sap and the tannins off of the cast iron, which I always think is a good thing. Let's get some of that rubbed in there, almost done here. And I was thinking about someday, not right now obviously, but someday, doing a video like this, like just a live stream, like live streaming the whole process of building a jig from start to finish. And you know, obviously I'm doing it anyway, so whether the camera's rolling or not, I would just have to get someone, like my wife or someone, to come and run camera so that it's not stopping, and the whole process goes like to real speed. This melamine is already pretty slick up here. I think that would be kind of silly to re-wax that. Both of our pieces are parallel, so top and bottom shouldn't matter one way or another. So we'll put our spots on there. Should get a nice slide. That slide's pretty good. So our front knob, I guess we could pick which knobs we like the best. They're all just about the same. Close enough for what we're doing. I think I'm going to put, this one seems a little bit meatier. Put him in the back here. A little paste wax over the threads to make it easy to go up and down. And one that isn't going to get turned as much, because this is kind of our lock knob up front. That's a tough question on that one. Shouldn't bother me so much, but I don't know which knob to use. Kind of like this one for the front. Paste wax on there too, that's good. Sync that up. Now, this is what I was talking about. See, make sure you look in the camera that you can see what I'm talking about here. Okay, we have to get the carriage head portion, the square part here, the bolt, has to go in there and seat flush. If it doesn't, you'll just tear out your groove and you'll lose some tolerance there. Of course, now I have to drop it down and get it in the hole first before I'm gonna re-show you that. So if we don't get that bolt to seat all the way flush in there, you're gonna end up ripping up your groove and you'll lose some of the tolerance that we established into the jig. So once we get this thing here, boom. Now, let me zoom out here. Oh, you can actually see just fine. So the way we set a jig like this, make sure it's loose enough that everything slides nice. So I already have this wedge put together, and how this works, again, this is, I have some wedgies coming from a company out there, but all you have to do is lock that in so it's nice and tight. This particular one is a 30-degree wedge that I cut myself, so the precision's not going to be dead perfect. But we'll go ahead and get that in there nice and tight. Both fences now are set to the right angle, same angle to the perpendicular plane. Now when we go in and trim this up and get a runner on it, that's how it'll work. It'll be going into the blade this way, so our blade will be on this side. I put one piece here up against the stop and run it through, and then move that same piece with the same part on the fence and the same side up over here and cut the next angle. We'll get both of our angles that way, and they'll all be matching. So that's the next step here. I'm pretty sure almost all of you who'd be interested in making something like this also know how to install a runner. But what I've done, this is following a couple other videos. I'm going to put 3 washers in here. Set my runner in. Get it up to the edge here. I've got a little line drawn on where that's going to be. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple drops of CA glue, because we're going to screw this on later. So I've got some CA on there. I'm going to throw a teeny bit of accelerator. And then I'm going to use the fence as my guide. Get right up to the edge there, right up to the edge on that. Drop it down and hold it. A little pressure on it. Now this is going to give us our everything we should need on this end to hold that runner down. And we'll flip it over, drill a couple of holes, and insert it with some 3/4 inch stainless steel screws. That should slide back and forth real nice. We already have our washers coming out. Let's see if it held. Ta-da! So I'm going to go ahead now and screw that in, and we'll be ready to do some test cuts and do the rest of the trimming of the fixture, because we're going to cut off that other edge to square it up perfectly to the miter slot to the blade, which this fence is set up very well. We're nice and parallel and square. So let's get that part done, and then I'll bring you back and we'll run it for a test run. Okay, we're going to true up our sled to the actual miter slot now. I have to get the screws back in the slots again. That one's moving fine. There we go. So let's get our not quite precision template together. Just remember this, I have some coming in that are actually made on CNC. So this one I had to make by myself. I'm just gonna squeeze it in here. Just pushing it down that way. It's gotta be pushed further in. So I probably should mark a center line on this just to make it easier for myself. But when the new ones come, I'm sure they have some sort of mechanism that makes it really clear how it works. Okay, we're in there. Tighten up here, tighten here, tighten here. I think I'm going to go get a angle finder and just see. This is actually 15 degrees aside. This is for 12 segments, which is 30 degrees, which is 15 degrees per side. So you take the 360 divided by the number of segments you want to accomplish, and then you take that number and divide it by 2. So this should be it. I'm going to go ahead and nip the corners off of this real quick while we're up already. Grab ourselves. Okay, get the camera at a little different angle here so we're completely out of the way. I'm going to set my first cut just to trim up the board we currently have. Because I started at a different angle. And I'm also marking my top surface here and one other surface with a nice long line, so that when we're lining these up we can go opposites to compensate for any difference or deflection in the blade angle. So let's just start out with the first cut. Before we get too crazy, this is what happens some days. I need to lower the blade and put the proper zero clearance fence in here so we kick those units away. We already did our first cut on this side of the jig. So now we're going to move it over here. We need it right side up. We have the right cut. Now we'll move over here, touch it to our stop block, and we should be ready to get our 16 segments. So Okay, I lost a little bit of the footage on how I made that throat plate. I'll have to go back and either make another one or just explain that that's an important part of the entire wedgie sled process. You need that little ramp to drop your pieces off as you cut them away from the blade to prevent any kind of kickback. You push your fence far away, set up a stop block for your depth, and then run your wedgies and they'll just roll right off that edge. I made my throat plate by taking my existing Shop Fox throat plate and using it as a router template. So I just double stick taped a piece of 1/4 inch plywood onto my existing throat plate and then used a pattern bit with a bearing on top to route the exact shape. Then with a little bit of sanding, I was able to get a tight press fit. Then I glued on my wedge, that is my off ramp for the wedges we cut off, and then lifted the blade up through it slowly with some weight, including the fence and the sled, on top of the throat plate to give me a zero clearance.